Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for turning up, and whenever you're turning up, whether it's live today or later on. My name's Jessica. I've lived here on the south coast of Spain now for 20 years in Almuñeca even, and I've worked as a coach for most of those years. Most of the time I'm working with people who are particularly miserable in their lives after they've created this kind of edifice that they live in and go, oh my God, that doesn't work. So they come out here on retreat, and we spend 2 days really looking at what they want to do. And part of my work is looking at mindset. Part of my work is looking at what are people thinking, what are the belief systems they have, what's stopping them being as best as they can be in their life. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today, because I think when we hit these kind of situations, we get a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. And it can be really challenging, whether you're working and you're trying to work from home, whether you're not working and suddenly you've got no structure and nothing to do and nowhere to go. The mind can go crazy. And so I just wanted to give you a few tips today to help you take control of that again, because we do have control. Interestingly, we might not think it sometimes when our mind's spinning off and all the horror stories are going off, but we do, and we can pull back control and find that calm space within us. I wanted to start with a short story. I lived in an ashram for 4 years, and one of the swamis I was talking to once, I was having a good old complain about something, about how this challenge was just too big and I don't know how to deal with it, and God, what am I going to do? And I'm pouring my hair out. And he said very calmly, as all these lovely swamis were, you're never given a challenge that's too big. Equally, you're never given a challenge that's too small. They're always the right size. You might not think they are. You might think it's too big, but actually these challenges are the perfect challenges for you to grow in your life. And all the challenges you've had in your life up until this moment have given you the strength and the ability to deal with the one that's in front of you. And I thought that was a lovely piece of advice. And I can look back through my life and go, yeah, I've had lots of different challenges of different types in my life. And they've all given me strength of some way. They've all given me something inside of myself that I can now pull on to handle whatever's being in front of me right now. And for some people, it's a really fearful time. And that's quite understandable, because it's an unknown, particularly as we have no end date in sight. If we all had an end date, we could all kind of hang in there until we get there, but there's no end date. And so that gives the mind plenty of opportunity to kind of create these horrible stories in our mind. But one of the things I wanted to do, stealing from an author called Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote the books Conversations with God, one of his first books, he had this beautiful acronym, which is FEAR, which is false evidence appearing real. And I love that, because it really puts fear in its place. And because in this moment in time, there isn't anything to fear. Right now, we're sitting here, we're listening to this, whenever it is you're doing that, there's nothing to fear in the moment, in the present moment. And only when you leave the present moment does fear arise in a thought form, because that's all fear is. It's a thought form. It's a mind construct. And it's what we create in our minds when we're not being the master of our minds. Because one of the things that I think is such a powerful thought is that we're not our mind. We might think we are, we might feel like we are our minds, but we're not, because there's something inside of us that can watch our mind. So if you can watch it, you're not it. And understanding that your mind can get up to all sorts of shenanigans right now, but it's not actually who you are. You can watch your mind doing this. As soon as you can take that step back, it gives you a bit more control over what your mind's up to, because you can start to look at it as like it's a bit like a naughty child, really. It's just kicking off and having a tantrum. And it's like, okay, now I can see that that's not who I am. I don't have to necessarily buy into it so much. One of the things we're not taught as children, and I think should be part of the school curriculum, is that you can choose your thoughts. And I can remember being told, as in my school when I was, I don't know, about 13 or something, I don't want to know what you're thinking. Miss Johnson. You know, it's all very prim and proper. I just want you to learn by rote. And that's kind of where we were in our school system. And I have a horrible feeling it's probably still the same. But I think one of the most powerful things we can teach ourselves at any stage in life is that we can choose our thoughts. We don't have to focus on the thought that happens to have the most power in this moment. We can step back and notice it and choose to actually, that's not a useful thought for me right now. And because if we look at things that we're feeling awful about, we are going to feel awful. It's going to affect our vibration, it's going to affect our energy, and we're going to feel like down in the dumps. And equally, if we look at things that are good, we're going to feel good. You know, when you go on YouTube and look at puppies, you know, and all that kind of stuff, you immediately feel uplifted and good because that's where your focus is. So where we choose to focus our thoughts is huge. I was watching today, and I actually posted it on Facebook, this video, I must have posted it years ago, of this incredible video of this condor who was being set free from a zoo. And it was in Peru, standing on the edge of this Colca Canyon. I visited it for my 50th birthday, which was far too many years ago than I care to remember. But I can remember being there, and it's literally like this with its wings for about, I don't know, 8 or 9 minutes. It's never really flown in this kind of environment. And it's there, and you can feel this incredible, amazing anticipation. And then it suddenly takes off and soars out. And I think that's an incredible thing, is that's the incredible freedom in that. And as I was watching that, I was thinking, I've just spent 10 minutes, and some people might say I've just wasted 10 minutes watching a video, but actually I've just taken 10 minutes to make my heart soar, to make my mind feel uplifted, to make myself feel good. And I think that's a key thing, especially now, is where are we focusing our mind? And that's a really important thing, I think, to contemplate, is that we're not our thoughts. You know, we can become the master of our mind if we choose to step back and look at our thoughts. And because if we don't, that's when we start to catastrophize life. Now, I'm a great proponent of meditation. I think meditation is an incredibly powerful tool. If you don't meditate or haven't meditated at all, there's lots of different apps that you can meditate with. I've got an actual free online group with morning meditation 3 times a week, which you're welcome to join. You can ask me somehow later and I can give you the details. But meditation is about watching the mind. A lot of people say to me when I'm teaching meditation, oh, I can't meditate. No, I can't make my mind go blank. And I'm like, well, no, nobody can, unless you're a monk and you've been doing it probably for 50 years up a mountain in the Himalayas. But you can watch your mind, and you can become aware of what your mind is up to. So even if you only spend 10 minutes a day in meditation, that can have a knock-on effect through the rest of the day, because when you're feeling bad, you've got this inbuilt guidance system. When you feel bad, the first question you want to ask yourself is, where's my mind? Because it's your mind that's giving you that feeling. It's the thought that you're allowing to run amok without any kind of, lead reins on it, that's creating the feeling inside. So as soon as you feel that feeling of, oh, I don't feel quite right, where's my mind? What's my mind up to? Because your mind will just go off on a riff all on its own. You don't even have to consciously be thinking these thoughts. It'll just be going off in the background. And so when you come back and you go, what's happening? What thought am I thinking that's making me feel like I've got a pit in my stomach, or I'm feeling constricted, or I feel like I want to just go back to bed and not sleep, not wake up for the next 3 months. What is it that your mind is doing? Where is your mind at this moment? And the whole thing around choosing your thoughts and becoming aware of your thoughts has an absolute control over what your experience of your day is. And so we need to learn to question our thoughts. And one of the most simple and powerful processes that I have ever come across was created by a woman called Byron Katie. Now, Byron Katie has been teaching her process, which is called The Work, for many years. she had this kind of epiphany. It must be over 20 years ago now. She was sleeping on the floor of an abused women's hostel in America, and she was feeling so bad about herself, she couldn't even allow herself to sleep on a bed. She didn't believe that she merited a bed, so she only slept on the floor. And she was feeling completely wretched. And she was lying on the floor one day, and she really did have this kind of absolute epiphany where she realized that all her suffering came from her thinking. Because she said, I could look at everything that had happened in my life and just go, well, that's just what happened, and this is where I am now, and I could move on from that. Or I could look at what happened in my life and make myself feel like a victim, make myself feel like I'm not even worth a bed, and all these different things. And she realized that all our suffering comes from our thinking, because we can look at a situation, we could be locked down here, whatever, and go, wow, everything's fine, we're feeling really good, I've got food in the larder, I've got Zoom client to Zoom to kind of connect with people, and we could look at it in a positive way. Or we could look at it in a way of going, I feel awful, I feel terrible, I feel locked down, I feel like I can't go anywhere, I feel like I've been constricted. And even as I'm talking like that, I can feel myself inside just getting tighter and tighter. So her process, and I've got an excerpt of her book with her process in, and I'm really happy to send that to you. If you would like that, again, let me know afterwards. But her process is a process for questioning your thoughts. And I find it's a simple process, but it's a really powerful process. And it's one of the things I've used for years. 10 years ago, or must be more actually, I went and did a 9-day course with Katie, with 500 other people. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And she has this process which she calls the work. There's also a website called thework.com, where you could go on, watch videos, speak to a facilitator, gain help in that way. But it's a very simple four question process. And the first question, when you catch a thought, when you're feeling awful inside and you go, where's my mind? And then you catch a thought, you go, okay. The first question is, can I absolutely know 100% that that is true? And to be really honest, most of the time, the answer to that is no. Because most of the time, these thoughts are things we've made up with our mind. But even if the answer is yes, that's fine. It's just noticing the truth or untruth of that thought. That's the purpose of that question. The second question, and there's kind of further questions in the book about this, but the second overarching question is, how does that thought, when I believe that thought, how does it make me feel? And the purpose of that question is to see the power of one thought. To demonstrate this, I'll tell you a quick story. When I lived in the ashram, we had this beautiful lake that I used to walk around. And I have a memory of walking around this lake crying. Not just a little few tears, but literally crying. You know, that kind of stuff when you can't even breathe. And I was just distraught. And as I'm walking around the lake, a thought probably popped into my head. Not probably, it did. It popped into my head. And I went, this isn't even true. This thought isn't even true. And I literally stopped crying straight away. And it was quite an incredible experience. But why I wanted to tell that story is because now when I tell that story, I can't even remember what that thought was. So insignificant was that thought. I can't even remember it. But I remember the power of one untrue thought. And for me, I think that's a really important thing to understand. So that question, how does that thought make me feel, is to understand the power of a thought that probably isn't true anyway. The next question in her process is, who would I be without the thought? In other words, if nothing else changed out externally, except I just didn't believe that thought, who would I be without the thought? And that gives you a new vista to walk into. And that can be a really powerful thing to do. And the fourth question is, what is the opposite of that thought? So if, for example, just to take a generic thought, that's what pops into my head, I'll never get my client back. Here you go, a business thought. I'll never get all my clients back. Okay. Question, is that true? No, absolutely. I don't know that's true. How does that make me feel? Pretty crap, actually. you know, you know, who would I be without the thought? I'd feel positive. I'd be still working. I'm still working with clients anyway, all those kind of things. Opposite of the thought, I will get my client base back. And then the whole point of that one is to then look for genuine evidence in your life where something like that or similar has happened. Now, if I think about that thought, I can think about a time when about 6 or 7 years ago when my business really dropped off, actually probably more now because it was 2008. So that's what is it? A lot of years ago. We all know that one, when my clients all dropped off and then they all came back again. So I've got evidence in my life where the opposite of that thought is also true. And if I hunted around a bit, I could probably find 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 pieces of evidence where similar things have happened in my life. And so the opposite is true. So this is one of my major tools for handling these unhelpful thoughts that can come up when we're feeling stressed in these kind of times. And they can be thoughts about ourselves, they can be thoughts about our business, they can be thoughts about our family, they can be thoughts about our situation. It's whatever thoughts that are popping up in you that are creating that heavy negative feeling inside. So like I say, if anybody would like the little book of that, please just let me know at any time. You can contact me through Facebook and I'll be happy to send that out to you, because I think it's it is for me, one of my major tools for handling these thoughts that kind of create all this horrible feeling inside. And another thing I think that's really important at this time, and you might already be doing this, is that turn off the news. Just turn it off. Give yourself a really, really limited amount, only what you really need to know, because news is a drip feed of negativity. There's only a few positive sources of news in this world, Positive News magazine being one, which I always highly recommend. There's occasional, like I know The Guardian have The Upside, they always look for a positive story. But other than that, you just don't need it. Just turn it off. Because your focus could be much better used watching puppies on YouTube than watching the news. You know, I think I'm a great happy thing. Puppies on YouTube. I've got a dog here I watch a lot. She's getting lots of attention at the moment. And when we want to just make ourselves feel good, because how we feel, also it's a two-way street. How we think creates how we feel, but how we feel creates how we think. So start doing some fun stuff, doing some creative stuff. I know some certain people on this thing are painting pebbles right now, and I'm a recipient of them, and they're very lovely pebbles. Just anything that's fun, anything that's light. You know, we love puzzling. We wasted a lot of time puzzling recently. So whatever is a fun, creative thing for you. If you want to do things that feel uplifting, there are so many people out there that you can listen to. What I love is going onto YouTube, and I've got a few favorites who I like to listen to, but then I like to see who's coming up on the right hand side, what different people are coming up, what other inspirational stuff. And some of it's weird and wacky and it's just very entertaining, but some of it's also very uplifting as well. So that whole time of just spending time for you, being inspired, looking anew, having fun, being creative, I think is another thing that can be really helpful. Making sure we connect with people, virtual dinners together, whatever that is, making sure, particularly if you're on your own, having kind of connections with people. We have a virtual dinner every now and again, which is great because it's like you're around a dinner table, but you're just in your own homes, but you're on Zoom or whatever it is. I think that's a really another thing. And maybe also just really investing in ourselves, doing what exercise you can do, eating well, having some structure in your day so you don't feel so kind of like a lifeboat without an anchor or whatever that is, and just being focused on the humor. And if you can't stop worrying, here's my big tip, and stop worrying. If you can't stop worrying, you are allowed to give yourself a half hour of worry a day. That's it. You have to identify the time. So between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I am allowed to worry. And then any other time in the rest of the day, if you catch yourself worrying, you have to say to yourself, no, I can't do that right now. It's not my worry half hour. I'm going to sit down at 4:30 and I'm going to consciously worry for half an hour. That very quickly shows you how pointless worry is, because worry doesn't get us anywhere. Worry doesn't stop us feeling, it doesn't make us feel better, it just down spirals us. So if you are addicted to worry in this time, then have a worry half hour and that's it, no more. The other thing that I think is really just important to know is that we have 3 brain states, and we have our reptilian brain, which is our survival brain, which we get chucked back into when we ever feel threatened in any way. We have our multitasking brain, and we have our, what I call our humanitarian brain, our higher brain, our visionary brain, which is when we're into contribution and all those kind of things. And we all would like to feel we live up there, but we don't. We live in all 3. And when we're in stress, we really do flip back into the reptilian brain quite a lot. And the reptilian brain, we're like a rabbit in the headlights. We're into reaction. That's when our thoughts go crazy. But one of the things just to know is that it's quite normal to flip back into that. So don't give yourself a hard time if you have those bad feelings. Don't give yourself a bad time if you're feeling stressed and down and depressed or fearful or whatever. It's quite normal. It's a normal part of who we are. We go between our 3 brain states. So don't wallow when you're there, but don't give yourself a hard time for being there either, because you're human and you're reacting and responding to what's going on around us. And know that if you're with people, those around you will also flip back into fear and into the reptilian brain state and into that rabbit in the headline state every now and again. And just know that's going to happen, and allow them to be there. You know, when they're ready to come out and they want help or they want to be distracted, yes, you can be there, but just giving ourselves a little bit of leeway to know that, yeah, we're going to go through all these different states. We're going to feel really amazing at some times and feel like we can maybe give something. And then we're going to feel times where we're like, oh, if I don't get out of this soon, I'm going to go crazy. And we're going to go through them. And it's okay. So yes, cut yourself some slack is really what I'm trying to say. We're just human. We're responding and doing as best we can. And the last pointer that I think is, and this is not just for now, this is for always, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that practicing gratitude, a daily practice of gratitude, it's a really powerful thing to do. If you don't do it, it completely shifts your perception of your day. I really like to do it in the evening, to kind of lie in bed and go, what's been good today? You know, many years ago, I used to have a gratitude page on Facebook where I used to post a picture for a whole year of what I was grateful for. And there were some days when really I wasn't very grateful for hardly anything. And I'd post things like, I'm grateful for my cup of tea. And I'd post a picture of my cup of tea, because that was about what I mostly I could find to be grateful for. But even doing that shifts how I felt, because it was like, there is something to be grateful for today. So I think in this time particularly, practicing gratitude is a really, really powerful kind of practice that we can do. I love this kind of visual thing, was that don't worry if the rug's being pulled out from under your feet, just learn to dance on a shifting carpet. And if you don't know the steps, make them up. And I think that's where we're at really right now. Let's make up the steps as we go forward.